Hey Linda, how's it going? How's this gonna work? Is that gonna work? That's okay. Maybe if I make it less like that, that's better. How's it going? I'm going to give everybody a minute to come in and I'm pooped and I keep rolling medication and then I cut it in half and I have one and then I can never find the second one unless I'm actually using them without thinking. Did I drop it in there? No. How you doing, Linda? You said you might be asleep. Did you see the little pity pup I sent you? I will find you and I will lick you. I want a pit bull, but they are actually outlawed in a lot of places in Canada, Ottawa being one of them. And so I wouldn't be allowed to travel with my dog. So that's why we've never had a pit bull, but I think they're the most adorable dogs on the face of the earth. I love my pitties. Hey, Whitby, Seashell. How's it going? Oh, I got an upset tummy. I went out and I picked beans today. Got a big dish pan full, so I'll be doing that, snapping them tomorrow and canning them. And then I got to start on the onions. It is good to be here. Oh, you're so cute with your puns. All right, let me get this going here. Gracie is out in the coach with her papa tonight. So I am hoping against hope she will stay out there. Because then she gets stupid and wants out, and then Howie has to bring her back in the house. But this time I sent out her dog treats and said, let her have a couple, 3 of them before bed, but don't overdo it. Oh, damn! And it was so well packed too. Give me a second here. Let's see if I can. I'm sorry. Just give me a second here, folks. And then we'll get on reading. I just want to give everybody a chance to come in. Go. Hey, Leanne. How are you, darling? Well, I see 7 people, but only 3 names. Only 3 names. All right, that's okay. Some people just come to listen. They don't have to talk. All right, give me 1 second to whip my whistle. Patrons. Freaky Friday will be 15 minutes after this video closes because I'll have to set up my speaker, make a fresh cup of tea, and all that fun stuff. Oh, I got an upset tummy. There. Now, and I did an unboxing video for our half-acre homestead. Oh, wow, that's really, really, really bad cut. So you got that to look forward to tomorrow if I get the video edited tonight. My knees. Oh, my knees. Excuse me. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Little Men Live. All righty. Chapter 7, Naughty Man. Fritz, I've got a new idea, cried Mrs. Bear, as she met her husband one day after school. Well, my dear, what is it? And he waited willingly to hear the new plan. For some of Mrs. Joe's ideas were so droll it was impossible to help laughing at them, though usually they were quite sensible, and he was glad to carry them out. Sounds like my husband, right? I was, my husband has been the floor in the family room downstairs where I had my studio 2 years ago, was caving. And it was because there was dry rot in the trusses, so he had to rip up the whole floor. Well, that was my studio at one point. This is it now. And so he had to, rip down all the staples that held my clouds and lights and sheets on the wall and all that stuff. And when I told him today I had an idea of how I could make this even better in the background, he went, okay. He's very patient, but he's also very supportive of my need to be creative, really, if you think about it. Anyway, Daisy needs a companion, and the boys would be all the better for another girl among them. You know we believe in bringing up little men and women together, and it's high time we acted up to our belief. They pet and tyrannize over Daisy by turns, and she's getting spoiled. Then they must learn gentle ways and improve their manners, and having girls about will do it better than anything else. You are right as usual. Now who shall we have? Asked Mr. Bear. Oh, that's how you spell it. Okay. Seeing by the look in her eye that Mrs. Joe had one already to propose. Little Annie Harding. What? Naughty Nan, as the lads call her. Oh, I thought it said naughty man in the beginning. As the lads call her, cried Mr. Bear, looking very much amused. Yes, she is running wild at home since her mother died, and is too bright a child to be spoiled by servants. I've had my eye on her for some time, and when I met her father in town the other day, I asked him why he did not send her to school. He said he would gladly if he could find as good a school for girls as ours was for boys. I know he would rejoice to have her come, so suppose we drive over this afternoon and see about it. Have you not cares enough now, my Joe, without this little gypsy to torment you? Asked Mr. Bear, patting the hand that lay on his arm. Oh, dear, no, said Mrs. Bear briskly. I like it, and never was happier than since I had my wilderness of boys. You see, Fritz, I feel a great sympathy for Nan, because I was such a naughty girl myself, and that I know all about it. She's full of spirits and only needs to be taught what to do with them to be a nice little girl as Daisy. Those quick wits of hers would enjoy lessons if they were rightly directed, and what is now a tricksy midget would soon become a busy, happy child. I know how to manage her, for I remember how my blessed mother managed me. And if you succeed half as well as she did, you will have done a magnificent work, interrupted Mr. Bear, who labored under the delusion that Mrs. B was the best and most charming woman alive. Excuse me. I have to turn my fan on. All these lights. Hang on a second. Now, if you make fun of my plan, I'll give you bad coffee for a week. And then where are you, sir? Cried Mrs. Joe, tweaking him by the ear as if he was one of the boys. Won't Daisy's hair stand erect with horror at Nan's wild ways? Asked Mr. Bear presently, when Teddy had swarmed up his waistcoat and Rob was up his back, for they always flew at their father the minute school was done. At first, perhaps, but it will do Posy good. She's getting prim and Bettyish and needs stirring up a bit. She's always had a good time when Nan comes over to play, and the two will help each other without knowing it. Dear me, half the science of teaching is knowing how much children do Half the science of teaching is knowing how much children do for one another and when to mix them. I only hope she won't turn out to be another firebrand. My poor Dan. I can never quite forgive myself for letting him go, sighed Mrs. Bear. At the sound of the name, little Teddy, who had never forgotten his friend, struggled down from his father's arms and trotted to the door and looked out over the sunny lawn with a wistful face, and then trotted back again, saying, as he always did when disappointed of the longed for sight, "My Danny's tummin' soon." I really think we ought to have kept him, if only for Teddy's sake. He was so fond of him, and perhaps baby's love would have done for him what we failed to do. Bad mistake making children responsible, babies responsible for misbehaving people. It's totally wrong. I'm sorry. I'm maybe because they're overlooking it, like they're overseeing everything. Puts a lot of pressure on a child. I've sometimes felt that myself, but after keeping the boys in a ferment and nearly burning up the whole family, I thought it safer to remove the firebrand for a time at least, said Mr. Bear. Dinner's ready. Let me ring the bell. And Rob began a solo upon that instrument, which made it impossible to hear oneself speak. Then may I have Nan? May I? Asked Mrs. Joe. A dozen Nans if you want them, my dear, answered Mr. Bear, who had room in his fatherly heart for all the naughty, neglected children in the world. When Mrs. Bear returned from her drive that afternoon, before she could unpack the load of little boys, without whom she seldom moved, a small girl of 10 skipped out the back of the carryall and ran into the house shouting, "Hi, Daisy, where are you?" Daisy came and looked pleased to see her guest, but also a trifle alarmed when Nan said, still prancing as if it was impossible to keep still, "I'm going to stay here always. Papa says I may, and my box is coming tomorrow. All my things had to be washed and mended, and your aunt came and carried me off. Isn't it great fun?" "Why, yes. Did you bring your big doll?" asked Daisy, hoping she had, for on the last visit, Nan had ravaged the baby house and insisted on washing Blanche Matilda's plaster face, which spoiled the poor dear's complexion forever. "Yes, she's somewhere around," returned Nan with unmaternal carelessness. "I made you a ring. Come along and pull the hairs out of Dobbin's tail. Don't you want it?" And Nan presented a horsehair ring in token of friendship, as they had both vowed they would never speak to one another again when they last parted. Won by the beauty of the offering, Daisy grew more cordial and proposed retiring to the nursery. But Nan said, "No, I want to see the boys in the barn," and ran off swinging her hat by one string till it broke, and then she left it to its fate on the grass. "Hello, Nan," cried the boys as she bounced in among them. "See, I'm a Nan. I'm a Joe. Always was." "I'm going to stay." "Hooray!" bawled Tommy from the wall on which he was perched, for Nan was his kindred spirit, and he foresaw larks in the future. "I can bat. Let me play," said Nan, who could turn her hand to anything and did not mind hard knocks. "We ain't playing now, and our side beat without you." "I can beat you in running anyway," returned Nan, falling back on her strong point. "Can she?" asked Nat of Jack. "She runs very well for a girl," answered Jack, who looked down upon Nan with a condescending approval. Excuse me. I have a pain in my leg, and I went out to the garden today and picked beans, and I'm feeling it, and every inch of my age. "She sure runs very well for a girl," answered Jack, who looked down upon Nan with condescending approval. "Will you try?" said Nan, longing to display her powers. "It's too hot," said Tommy, languished against the wall as if quite exhausted. "What's the matter with Stuffy?" asked Nan, whose quick eyes were roving from face to face. Ball hurt his hand. He howls at everything, answered Jack scornfully. I don't. I never cry, no matter how I'm hurt. It's babyish, said Nan loftily. Pooh, I could make you cry in 2 minutes, returned Stuffy, rousing up. See if you can. Go and pick that bunch of nettles then, said Stuffy, pointed to a sturdy specimen of that prickly plant growing by the wall. Now, here's something I want to tell you about stinging nettles. Stinging nettles don't actually prick you. The hairs on the stems and on the leaves have very, very delicate skins. And when you touch them, they break. And that releases histamine. It's not pricks, it's histamine. Nan instantly grasped the nettle, pulled it up, and held it in a defiant gesture in spite of the most unbearable sting. Good for you, cried the boys, quick to acknowledge courage even in the one of the weaker sex. More nettled than she was, Stuffy determined to get a war cry out of her somehow and said tauntingly, You're used to poking your hands into everything, so that isn't fair. Now go and bump your head real hard against the barn and see if you don't howl then. Don't do it, said Nat, who hated cruelty. But Nan was off and running straight at the barn. She gave her head a blow that knocked her flat and sounded like a battering ram. Dizzy but undaunted, she staggered up, saying stoutly, though her face was drawn with pain, That hurt, but I don't cry. Do it again, said Stuffy angrily, and Nan would have done it, but Nat held her, and Tommy, forgetting the heat, flew at Stuffy like a little gamecock, roaring out, Stop it, or I'll throw you over the barn. And so shook and hustled poor Stuffy that for a minute he did not know whether he was on his head or his heels. She told me to, was all he could say when Tommy let him alone. Never mind if she did. It's awfully mean to hurt a little girl, said Demi reproachfully. Oh, I don't mind. I ain't a little girl. I'm older than you and Daisy. So now, cried Nan ungratefully. Don't preach, Deacon. You bully Posy every day of your life, called out the Commodore, who just hove into sight. I don't hurt her, do I, Daisy? And Demi turned to his sister, who was pouring Nan's tingling hands and recommending water for the purple lump rapidly developing itself on her forehead. You're the best boy in the world, promptly answered Daisy, adding, as truth compelled her to do so, You hurt me sometimes, but you don't mean to. Put away the bats and things and mind what you're about, my hearties. No fighting will be allowed aboard this ship, said Emil, who rather lorded it over the others. How do you do, Madge Wildfire, said Mr. Bear as Nan came in with the rest to supper. Give thy right hand, little daughter, and mind thy manners, he added, as Nan offered him her left. The other hurts me. The poor little hand. What has it been doing to get those blisters? He asked, drawing it from behind her back, where she had put it with a look which made him think she had been in mischief. Before Nan could think of any excuse, Daisy burst out with the whole story, during which Stuffy tried to hide his face in a bowl of bread and milk. When the tale was finished, Mr. Bear looked down the long table at his wife and said with laughter in his eyes, This rather belongs to your side of the house, so I won't meddle with it, my dear. Mrs. Joe knew what he meant, but she liked her little black sheep all the better for her pluck, though she only said in her soberest way, Do you know why I asked Nan to come here? To plague me, muttered Stuffy with his mouth full. To help make little gentlemen out of you. And I think you have shown that some of you need it. Here Stuffy retired into his bowl again and did not emerge until Demi made them all laugh by saying in his slow, wondering way, How can she, when she's such a tomboy? That's just it. She needs help as much as you, and I expect you to set her an example of good manners. Is she going to be a little gentleman too? Asked Rob. She'd like it, wouldn't you, Nan? Added Tommy. No, I shouldn't. I hate boys, said Nan fiercely, for her hands still smarted, and she began to think that she might have shown her courage in some wiser way. I'm sorry you hate my boys, because they can be well mannered and most agreeable when they choose. Kindness in looks and words and ways is true politeness, and anyone can have it if they only try to treat other people as they like to be treated themselves. The golden rule, right? Mrs. Bear had addressed herself to Nan, but the boys nudged one another and appeared to take the hint, for that time at least, and passed the butter, said please and thank you, yes, sir, and no, ma'am, with unusual elegance and respect. Nan said nothing, but kept herself quiet and refrained from tickling Demi, though strongly tempted to do so because of the dignified airs he put on. So she appeared to have forgotten her hatred of boys and played I Spy with them until dark. Stuffy was observed to offer her frequent sucks on his candy ball during the game, which evidently sweetened her temper, for the last thing she said on going to bed was, "When my battledore and shuttlecock comes, I'll let you play with them." Her first remark in the morning was, "Has my box come?" And when told that it would arrive sometime during the day, she fretted and fumed and whipped her doll till Daisy was shocked. She managed to exist, however, till 5 o'clock, when she disappeared and was not missed until supper time, because those at home thought she had gone to the hill with Tommy and Demi. "I saw her going down the avenue alone as hard as she could pelt," said Mary Ann, coming in with hasty pudding and finding everyone asking, "Where is Nan?" "She has run home, little gypsy," cried Mrs. Bear, looking anxious. "Perhaps she's gone to the station to look after her luggage," suggested Franz. "That is impossible. She does not know the way, and if she found it, she could never carry that box a mile," said Mrs. Bear, beginning to think that her new idea might rather be a hard one to carry out. Did we have a disconnect? I'm sorry. It would be like her, and Mr. Bear caught up his hat and go and find the child, when a shout from Jack, who was at the window, made everyone hurry to the door. There was Miss Nan, to be sure, tugging along a very large bandbox tied up in a linen bag. Very hot and dusty and tired did she look, but she marched stoutly along and came puffing up the steps, where she dropped her load with a sigh of relief and sat down upon it, observed, as she crossed her tired arms, "I couldn't wait any longer, so I went and got it." "But you did not know the way," said Tommy, while the rest stood around enjoying the joke. "Oh, I found it. I never get lost." "It's a mile. How could you go so far?" "Well, it was pretty far, but I rested a good deal." "Wasn't that thing very heavy?" "It's so round that I couldn't get a hold of it, and I thought my arms might break off." "I don't see how the station manager let you have it," said Tommy. "I didn't say anything to him. He was in the little ticket place and didn't see me, so I took it off the platform." "Run down and tell him it's all right, Fritz, or old Dodd will think it's stolen," said Mr. Bear. "Oh, sorry. Run down and tell him it's all right, Franz, or old Dodd will think it's stolen," said Mr. Bear, joining the shout of laughter at Nan's coolness. "I told you we would send for it if it did not come. Another time you must wait, for you will get into trouble if you run away. Promise me this, or I shall not dare trust you out of my sight," said Mrs. Bear, wiping the dust off of Nan's hot little face. Well, I won't. I won't. Only Papa tells me not to put off doing things, so I don't." "Oh, okay. Well, I won't. Only Papa tells me not to put off doing things, so I don't." "Well, that is rather a poser. I think you'd better give me some supper now and a private lecture by and by," said Mr. Bear, too much amused to be angry at the young lady's exploit. The boys thought it great fun, and Nan entertained them all supper time with an account of her adventures. For a big dog had barked at her, a man had laughed at her, a woman had given her a donut, and her hat had fallen into the brook when she stopped to drink, exhausted with her exertion. I fancy you will have your hands full now, my dear. Tommy and Nan are quite enough for one woman, said Mr. Bear half an hour later. I know it will take some time to tame the child, but she is a generous, warm-hearted little thing. I should love her even if she were twice as naughty, answered Mrs. Joe, pointing to the merry group in the middle of which stood Nan, giving away her things right and left as lavishly as if the big band box had no bottom. It was those good traits that soon made little Giddy Gaddy, as they called her, a favorite with everyone. Daisy never complained of being dull again, for Nan invented the most delightful plays, and her pranks rivaled Tommy's to the amusement of the whole school. She buried her big doll and forgot it for a week, found it well mildewed when she dragged it up. Daisy was in despair, but Nan took it to the painter who was at work about the house, got him to paint it brick red with staring black eyes. Then she dressed it up with feathers and scarlet flannel and one of Ned's leaden hatchets in the character of an Indian chief. The late Poppy Dilla tomahawked all the other dolls and caused the nursery to run red with imaginary gore. God, she sounds just like me as a kid. She gave away her new shoes to a beggar child, hoping to be allowed to go barefoot, but found it impossible to combine charity and comfort, and was ordered to ask leave before disposing of her clothes. She delighted the boys by making a fire ship out of a shingle with 2 large sails wet with turpentine, which she lighted, and then sent the little vessel floating down the brook at dusk. She harnessed the old turkey cock to a straw wagon and made him trot around the house at a tremendous pace. She gave her coral necklace for 4 unhappy kittens, which had been tormented by some heartless lads, and tended them for days as gently as a mother, dressing their wounds with cold cream, feeding them with doll spoons, and mourning over them when they died, till she was consoled by one of Demi's best turtles. Oh, that's sad. She made Silas tattoo an anchor on her arm like his, and begged hard to have a blue scar on each cheek, but he dared not do it, though she coaxed and scolded till the soft-hearted fellow longed to give in. She rode every animal on the place, from the big horse, Andy, to the cross pig from whom she was rescued with difficulty. Whatever the boys dared her to do, she instantly attempted. Have I ever told you, never dare me anything? No matter how dangerous it might be, and they were never tired of testing her courage. Mr. Bear suggested that they should see, this is what happens when you're a little girl and you're raised by 3 older brothers and 1 sister. Mr. Bear suggested that they should see who would study best. Mr. Bear suggested that they should see who would study best, and Nan found as much pleasure in using her quick wits and fine memory as her active feet and merry tongue, while the lads had to do their best to keep their places. For Nan showed them that girls could do almost anything as well as boys, and some things better. There were no rewards in school, but Mr. Bear's well done and Mrs. Bear's good report on the conscience book taught them to love duty for its own sake, and to try to do it faithfully. Sure, sooner or later, the recompense would come. Little Nan was quick to feel the new atmosphere, to enjoy it, to show that it was what she needed, for this little garden was full of sweet flowers, half hidden by the weeds, and when kind hands gently began to cultivate it, all sorts of green shoots sprung up, promising to blossom beautifully in the warmth and love and care, the best climate for young hearts and souls the world over. Well, thank you for joining me. I was I enjoyed that. I often said in Little Women that Joe reminded me of me. I was a tomboy. Boy, was I a tomboy. And today's culture wouldn't have suited me at all when I was 14. This is Mrs. Wolfe from Reading with Beverly Wolfe saying, what will we read next? I have an idea. Take care. God bless. And as soon as the canning and the hunting and everything's done, I'm hoping to go up to 2 nights a week. All right, you guys. Take care. I love you. Patrons, I'll see you in about 20 minutes. Mwah! Take care. God bless and have a lovely weekend.